You're listening to the MVP Real Estate and Mortgage Report. The views and opinions shared on this program don't necessarily reflect those of Citywide Home Loans. Citywide Home Loans, LLC, NMLS 67180. David Hosterman, NMLS 220562. Jonathan Edwards, NMLS 671258. Equal housing lender. Regulated by the Division of Real Estate. Call for additional cost information. Program qualifications and offerings are subject to change at any time. Not all that apply will qualify. Other restrictions may apply.
Good morning and welcome back to the MVP Real Estate and Mortgage Report. I'm David Hosterman alongside my co-host John Edwards with Citywide Home Loans. In the studio this morning, we have our MVP guest host, Dan Maley with Your Castle Real Estate. This is the show that brings you today's most relevant real estate insights and experiences from the industry's most dedicated players. John, how you doing?
Good morning, Dave. Morning, Dan. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. You?
Good. Great to have you back on the show.
I know.
Thanks for having me back. Yeah, it's been a bit.
Got a blast from the past here, Dan Maley.
I know.
Dan and I grew up like next door neighbors. What? Like
We did, yeah.
years and years ago. Not that long ago, I guess.
Well,
I shouldn't age us.
20-something plus
Dan
years.
just had a
We'll let
birthday
25?
like last week.
I sure did. But we'll let people guess about our ages.
I think that's a good idea. John, why don't you tell our listeners what's on tap for today's show?
All right, guys, we got a great show. Today we are going to kick off the show with one of Denver's most well-respected and experienced real estate professionals. Dan, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We're going to discuss how working with millennials is different than older generations. We also go over Denver's newest real estate statistics, and stay tuned for a triple play of Denver's hottest listings.
And got to throw out our yellow card for the week. Just a quick disclaimer that Citywide Home Loans and Your Castle Real Estate are not affiliated entities. Listeners are not required to use either participant to work with the other participant. Dan, again, thanks so much for being on the
Thanks for
show.
having me, Dave. Yeah, good to see you.
And I know a lot about you because we're dear friends and have been for many years and went to grade school together and high school together. But why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself, past real estate experiences? I know we've worked on numerous deals together, and you're always, utmost professional when it comes to those transactions and really, guide your clients through the home buying process and, always have their best interest in mind. But tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself and some of your past real estate experiences.
Sure. Well, we both went to Repo High School those many years ago, and after that, I was in corporate world for a bit, and ended up moving to London, England, where I fell into real estate after selling my first house. And so I did that before, really, I had no clue about real estate. I had no clue about, statistically how prices rise, what that looks like on average through, decades upon decades. And so I kind of made a mistake because when I came back in 2015 after leaving in 2012, as you know, prices were a lot different. So seeing it firsthand, and we'll talk about this later in the show, but we're now in the London, San Francisco, New York market.
Yeah.
And I came back to Denver because it was so extreme. And so it's interesting now that we're there.
Yeah.
Here.
I think, there was a statistic a few years ago, and I'm sure it still holds true, because our economy and housing market has just gone up, is that Denver was at that point the most expensive non-coastal city in the U.S. for buying a house.
Yep.
And I would imagine it's probably still true.
Yeah, that would make sense. So, Dan, you said that you were in England for a while and you were selling real estate in England. Tell us a little bit about the differences in selling real estate in England versus here in the U.S.
Well, it's just so different. So the first thing is that here we have buyer agents. If you talk to the old school real estate agents, from 30, 35 years ago, we actually didn't have buyer agents 30 to 35 years ago in the U.S. England, they still don't have buyer agents. And I'll remember, so we work for the seller, and I'll remember my boss at the time told me to show a really great flat in London, right in the heart of it all. And he told me, Dan, only show that at night and when it's not raining. And I said, excuse me? And in England it rains like all the time.
Yeah.
And it was because the house or the loft had huge holes in the roof.
Oh, God.
And their inspections come instead of at the front of the deal, they come at the very end of the deal. So it is the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
It is buyer beware. And it didn't fit with my personality of helping people and helping them build long-term wealth. So I said, see ya, I'll come do this in Denver, at home.
That's wild. And you're at Your Castle Real Estate. Great company.
Yeah, went back, actually.
Yeah, got a ton of respect for Lon and Charles over there. My old business partner, Joe Massey. I know he's one of their preferred lenders and, fantastic lender out there. And, great company, though. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. They were the first. They really resonated with me when I came back from London because they look at property as investments, and so there's a lot of investors there. But even if you're just a owner occupant, real estate is still by far the best way to accumulate wealth. Period. And so they really focus on that and finding the right place for people and helping them find their place in the world via their home. And I'm glad to be back. I left for 4 years, went to some other brokerages, and back home. I'm excited to be there.
Definitely. John, why don't you kick us off on the first half of the show? I know we got a great subject to chat about.
We really do. So Dan, the ball's in your court here. We're going to talk about millennials, which actually fits the mold for all three of us here today on the show. But millennials are a little bit of a different ball game, Dan. And so we want to talk a little bit about how it is different to work with millennials versus some of the older generations. And I thought that we'd kind of start this segment off by going through the different generations. So if people don't know, some of our listeners aren't aware, I'll just kind of walk through that real quick. We've got the greatest generation, born from 1901 to 1927, the silent generation, born from 1928 to 1945, baby boomers, born from 1946 to 1964, Generation X, 1965 to 1980, and then millennials, who we're talking about today, 1981 to 1995, and Generation Z, 1996 to 2010, followed by the newest one, which I hadn't heard before, Generation Alpha, which is born 2011 to 2025. Interesting. Today our main topic here is millennials, but we'll talk about some of these other generations as well. Dan, what are some of the main things that you're seeing? I know you work with a lot of millennials. Yeah. What do you see that's a little bit different than maybe working with some of the older generations?
It's interesting because I look at it through my clients, but I also look at it through my own lens since I was born in 1979, since I was kind of, in that cusp. And I think the biggest thing with millennials is that, they've gone through, they went through the Great Recession. They've kind of seen America in its best kind of building and then maybe a slight decline. And so obviously, like we remember, Dave, right, and John, the days before Facebook and texting and all that stuff.
The good old days.
The good old days.
Yeah, and so I think, everyone, especially millennials, are really quick to get on their phone, start looking at properties. They can go to some of these other discount firms and, book a showing with an agent, but they don't necessarily know, like, the neighborhood, the market dynamics behind that. And so I think my job, especially with millennials, as opposed to the other generations, is just really sitting down with them and educating them about the market, why you want to work with a full-service agent, and how building a property is going to accumulate long-term wealth for you, whether that's trading up, getting investment properties, et cetera. Kind of having that personal interaction when you're making the biggest purchase of your life.
And I completely agree with you. I think millennials are very tech savvy, right? Like they're so quick to react as well, to where, like Dan mentioned, they may see on Facebook this, low cost brokerage that is charging a flat fee because this low cost brokerage has a lot of ad spend within Facebook. So they call them and now they're hooked, right? It's not necessarily the right thing. We see it all the time with the big banks out there, right? Where these millennials, they get these amazing interest rates that are, maybe an eighth to a quarter lower than us. Fees are maybe $500 cheaper, but they're so adamant about going with this big bank, where at the end of the day, that big bank may not be able to perform the same way we do. I think it's a matter of these millennials understanding the quality of the service that they are getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've saved numerous deals, countless deals, Dave, for somebody that initially went with one of the bigger lenders, only to find out somewhere down the road, usually once they're under contract, that they're not able to do the loan or get it closed for whatever reason. A lot of times, those bigger lenders are going to have more overlays, and quite frankly, a lot of the loan officers aren't going to be quite as experienced as somebody with a smaller, mid-size mortgage company that's been doing it for a long time. And I think, Dan, that plays true for you guys on the real estate side as well. You guys are out there, you're pounding the pavement, you're working hard for your clients. You're not just a big brokerage that's out there running through clients left and right.
Yeah, I think people have the misconception that just because you hang your hat at a brokerage, that the brokerage, gives you clients or kind of builds your business, and that we're all the same. The truth is that all real estate agents are independent agents or independent, what do they call it?
Contractors.
Contractors. And so you can have your own brokerage if you have had 2 or more years in real estate, and if you get kind of a broker's license, which is a step above. But most people are independent agents that work and manage their own business, but hang their hat at a firm like Your Castle or where I was before Compass for marketing some of the things that agents don't necessarily want to do themselves. But yeah, it's really that individual and that personal touch that when clients hire me, they're hiring kind of a suite of services, right?
Yes.
And that also includes you as my lender partners. You guys have been great with numerous clients, and that kind of trickles down even to inspectors.
Painters.
I had a buyer recently who reached out to me and said, I've hired a lawyer and I'm not going after you, but I didn't listen to you. I used my own inspector who didn't really know what they were doing. And there were all these plumbing issues. And so he's now in the process of moving forward to sue either the seller who might have known about the issue and didn't disclose it, or the inspector himself. And so, having a close-knit team that works in tandem is just so important when you're in a market that's this competitive for buyers.
And like you said, it's to find the right professionals. These inspectors, there's such a lack of licensing from the Department of Regulatory Affairs in regards to inspectors. Pretty much anybody can be classified as a home inspector. I think they're in the process of trying to regulate that a little bit more. Real estate, though, too. You could take real estate classes online and become an agent.
A real estate agent, yeah.
Lenders, same thing. There's material online, how to pass these tests, study guides, the materials right there. But it's finding the right professional that has that information that that you need as that consumer. I want to bring up one thing, Dan. I was featured in an article published by Fannie Mae, the largest financial institution when it comes to backing mortgage-backed securities, about millennials looking at more condos. We're seeing that increase in Colorado, and I think, like you said, Chicago, LA, some of these bigger cities where millennials, they don't want to have a yard. They don't want to have upkeep. They don't want to deal with the painting of the exterior, staining the garage door, stuff like that. Are you seeing a bigger trend in, properties that have HOAs like condos with millennials?
It's interesting. I would totally agree with that. The issue is just the supply of inventory specifically for condos that we have in Denver because of our building law with the builders. And so what you're seeing is all these great new, what I'm seeing is, all these great new apartments that are being built with, gyms and hot tubs, and they're very modern, very small. Like you mentioned, millennials don't usually like a lot of space. But they're just so expensive. I mean, their rents are so much higher than what a mortgage payment would be.
Yes.
And if you do get a condo in Denver, you're looking at a lot of them that were built in the 80s and the early 90s. We haven't seen that conversion like we need to. And that has a lot to do with, just the local, the building sewer laws that have been kind of affecting But there are, communities that pop up a little bit outside of Denver and other areas. But yeah, I think absolutely millennials are liking, and that's part of the reason why they're staying in these apartments where they're not making any return on their money. They're just paying their rent, but it's nice living conditions.
No, totally.
But
Yep.
then when you start building a family, et cetera,
Then you start moving out to the suburbs.
Right.
And
exactly.
Yeah, no, totally. You are listening to the MVP Real Estate Mortgage Report on ESPN Radio 1600. Check out our past episodes on our podcast at 1043thefan.com. For mortgage questions, give John Edwards a call at 303-921-5747. If you'd like to get in touch with Dan Maley with Your Castle Real Estate to discuss buying your next house, selling your next house, getting your first house, definitely give him a call. He's by far one of the best in the business. Dan Maley with Your Castle Real Estate can be reached at 720-951-1848. John, we got some good listings this week, I think.
We got some great ones, and I know Dan's got one for us here in a minute, too. The first one I've got this week is Mark Eibner with Metro Brokers Realty Oasis. Has a great property at 9518 Troon Village Drive. That's in Lone Tree. This one's on the market at $700,000. Beautiful property, 4 beds, 3 bath, over 2,600 square feet. If you'd like some more information on this property, reach out to Mark Eibner at 720-724-8001.
I got a great one here with another Metro Brokers agent, Mike Hammond. This property is located at 2896 Deer Creek Place in Highlands Ranch. It's listed just shy of $615,000. It's at $614,900. It's a beautiful, beautiful property. It's got 2,301 total square feet. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. Has been updated. If you'd like to get in touch with Mike Hammond from Metro Brokers, give him a call at 720-445-1121.
All right, guys. So we'll kick off the second half here. We've talked quite a bit about millennials, and what we hadn't talked about too much was Gen Z, and that's sort of that next generation. Gen Z is 25 years old, in that range. Dan, I think we're going to start to see these folks purchasing homes as well. You may have already seen that on your end, but millennials are clearly buying homes. They're moving through, and now there's that younger generation that's going to be purchasing homes as well.
Yeah, and I think millennials are really what's pushing what our current market looks like. I mean, COVID slashed inventories, but we've been working in a market from 2013 through 2019 with low inventory as well. But the millennials that are coming into the market and the decrease of baby boomers, which I think was the biggest generation.
Yeah, that's a valid
So
point.
you have all of this kind of pent-up millennial demand for properties. And so my opinion is that that's going to keep these current market statistics in this kind of mode for quite a while. The data that I've looked at says at least 7, but potentially even up to 19, 20 years because of the size of millennials coming into the market and just how low overall inventory levels are across the country.
So another 20 years of this? Oh, boy.
Well, and it's very interesting. You see these mortgage companies and real estate companies try to adapt to the millennial market, right? At Citywide, we are very tech savvy. So we have a very robust mobile app, which the clients are able to upload stuff to the mobile app, and that automatically gets into our loan operating system. They're able to run payment analysis. If they know what kind of rate they're getting offered, they're able to run, what their payment would be on a property. We allow digital signatures on loan documents. But you're seeing that trend increase, in my opinion, not only with millennials, but just in general with the pandemic, right?
Yep.
You saw a lot of people getting into more digital stuff, and you got to see the same stuff, Dan. I would imagine that your job has become easier on clients approaching you saying, "Hey, Dan, I want to see this house." Right? I saw this house online. Can you get me into this house? That's probably become a lot easier. The harder thing is probably the negotiations, the inspection aspect, putting the contract together, but you're probably seeing a lot more clients coming to you with houses they want to see. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having these apps and stuff does make it a lot easier. I mean, I remember when I first started here in Colorado back in 2015, it was just kind of blind, right? Like I'd look at the MLS and see, okay, well, this is booked, but we want to see all these different properties. And it was a lot of time to, figure out traffic and how we could see these properties in an order that made sense. And so now, based on the apps, that will kind of show you all together kind of which properties would fit up where. And so if someone, especially in this competitive market, needs to see something, we can do it,
instantaneously,
pretty much in an hour's notice or so.
And you're not sending these properties to these clients. You still are, because you're that type of an agent, right?
Right.
Like, hey, I found this property. It could fit your needs. And a lot of times these clients have already seen them online. It's remarkable. But I want to get back to one thing, John, talking about, why you should use an agent like Dan is, Dan, you have a property that's not in the MLS. It's not on any of these apps. It's not, not online. Mm-hmm. It's what we call in the industry a pocket listing, right? Mm-hmm. It's a pocket listing right now. It's in Dan's back pocket. And I want you to tell our listeners about that property, because this could be a perfect time in this competitive market for, either an agent listening to the show or, a potential homeowner listening to the show that might want to see this property.
Yeah, that does happen quite a bit in our industry. The thing to remember is just it depends on kind of what the seller wants to do. And so I'm very... If the seller wants to go that route, and a lot of people do, you see these open doors and you see them paying actually premiums. I heard this week that Zillow has stopped their iBuyer program, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. But it just depends on the seller's situation, because the heart of the matter is that if the seller just wants to get a good price, especially in this market, and not have to deal with showings and with the kids and the pets and stuff, then that can make sense. But by not advertising it
on the market,
on the MLS,
you might be leaving some money on the table.
You could.
Yeah. But don't you have a property right now that...
Yeah, I have a sweet little a condo that's in a really great location. It's actually in Spear neighborhood, which...
Where's that?
Everyone calls it West Wash Park, but let me tell you something. Anything north of Alameda is not West Wash Park. It's actually Spear neighborhood, and it's Spear is just south of Governor's Park and south of Capitol Hill. Yep. So it's basically right where 9 News intersects Pennsylvania and 3rd. Yeah. And it's a great location because you're 8 minutes from Wash Park, you're 6 minutes from Cherry Creek, you're 6 minutes from downtown, you have Spear. So in that regard, it's great. And it's, it's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 670 square foot little unit with a great balcony, with a pool, party room. And the thing about this one is that it's on the penthouse floor. Oh. And it faces west, and I'll tell you, those views,
I can imagine.
It has amazing views of Red Rocks, of the mountains to the west, and then also right to the city.
Yeah. And right now, with all the leaves changing, I can imagine sitting out there.
Yeah, so that's coming on next week. It'll probably be on Thursday. Okay. If you'd like to know more information, feel free to give me a shout. My number is 720-951-1848, and it'll be around $300K with a HOA of $315 a month. But that includes all amenities.
Not a bad HOA either.
Power and water and sewer and trash and all that good stuff. So
very good, very good. What else are you seeing in the market right now, Dan? I know you got some pretty impressive statistics out there.
Yeah, well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the what do I call it? It's kind of the pitfall that buyers fall into. Yeah. Because a lot of these millennials and a lot of other folks that aren't necessarily selling but want to get into the market and start making some money, they always start in the spring. And so it has been, especially this last year, it has been, as you guys know, because I've had to lose a lot of my customers losing loans because they have to borrow actual cash from either family members or taking things out of their stocks, et cetera,
Yep.
just to be competitive in the market. And so, my one word of advice for buyers is that if you are buying for the first time or you want to get in the market, please do not wait.
Yeah.
Or, please don't do it in the spring when you're going to have a horrible experience.
Yes.
You're going to be paying so
Top
much
dollar.
more above asking price. And what happens is we have that buyer fatigue where buyers just,
Yep.
they peace out. And, I was talking to some other agents in my office this past week, and they had something that was really smart and something that I hadn't thought of, but maybe show them a little bit of the market, but then take a break and say, let's revisit this in, September,
months. Yeah.
in October, in November. And so we still have inventory levels that are quite good at the moment. During the holidays, those do decrease, but for buyers, your best bet is to do anything late summer into the fall, where you're probably cutting your competition by 75% or so.
Yeah. No, I think buying in the fall and the winter is a great time. You're not getting beaten up like Dan said, and paying a top dollar, and it just. The funny thing about it though is every year that spring rush happens earlier.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be
Yeah, it's really
April,
like
then it
February
became
last
March,
Well, and
and then
it's-
it becomes February, and
It's actually whenever the if the Broncos suck and
Yeah.
if football's done, we're a football town, I'm telling you. So if the Broncos are done, that's the start of the season,
Yeah.
no matter what.
So, Dan, one of the statistics that you had here in your notes was that the average price of a home in 1971 was $27,000.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what are we, 50 years later? And it's, 471, 500,000, something like that?
And I get it with buyers. You're like, this just seems insane, especially the percentage year over year where it's, between 15 and 20. Of course, we have cooling, which will bring that down when you look at it annually. But, yeah, it's like, okay, so we've been tracking data since roughly 1971. And for 44 years, we've had prices are going up. Only 4 years have prices stayed flat or gone down.
Yeah.
That's
That's
crazy.
Remarkable.
Wow.
That's crazy. How about it? You been watching any of the World Series, John?
Well, yeah, the Red Sox didn't make it, but I saw a little bit of the first game. I didn't see what happened yesterday. Did you?
Could you believe that
I saw,
pitcher
yeah.
for the Braves? He takes a line drive to the fibula, breaks his fibula, continues to pitch and get 3 outs. Goes to the
I didn't
goes
see
to
that.
the bench. Goes to the bench while the Braves are batting. Comes back out on the field and pitches again with a broken fibula.
I did
Talk
not
about
see that.
dedication. Talk
Boy,
about a team player.
I was watching that last night.
I don't know what rock I've been hiding under.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thanks so much for being on the show. Always love
I
seeing
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah, great seeing you both.
If you'd like to get in touch with Dan Maley with Your Castle Real Estate to talk about anything real estate, he's a wealth of knowledge, as you can tell. Please reach out to Dan at 720-951-1848. Thank you so much for tuning in to the MVP Real Estate Mortgage Report. If you have a question about financing your next home or refinancing your current mortgage, give us a call at Citywide Home Loans at 303-921-5747. Don't miss next week's show right here on ESPN Radio 1600, Saturday at 7 a.m. You can find our past episodes on our podcast at 1043 The Fan.